reader, there's the language comprehension side, and that's like the background and vocabulary that you bring to a text. It's where that meaning's really made, where you're interacting and thinking about a text. The other side of it is your word recognition, and that's kind of when I'm saying foundational reading, I'm talking about this word recognition side of things. So it's phonemic awareness, the ability to hear sounds in words, to be able to segment sounds, or if you're sounding out a word, to blend those sounds back together. So it's all about being able to hear it and bring it together. There's the decoding and spelling side of things. So that's typically if you hear somebody, oh, just sound out the word. It's really students having the skills at recognizing, oh, this particular spelling pattern makes this particular sound in this particular situation, because we all know with English there's quite a few different rules, and sometimes it applies here and not there. So when I'm talking about foundational reading, I'm really focusing on that word recognition side of becoming a skilled reader, because as you can see, if we don't have automaticity with that, you're missing a component of that reading. And as you looked, as Eliza shared out some of our data, like it was very evident to us that we really need to strengthen that word recognition and foundational skills for our K-3 students. So we really are working towards having this goal of building practices and systems that align to research so that all of our students, by the time they get to third grade, have really strong foundational reading skills. So this isn't the first year that we've started this work. We kind of started at Hiawatha looking into and building some practices the prior year and started to make some adjustments. So I'll give you a little bit of that background and then tell you about our next steps. So in 2024-25, last year, as a system, we recognized phonemic awareness. We really needed to make sure all of our students were having extra opportunities for phonemic awareness. So we built in extra opportunities for that during core time, where every student was getting that extra time on that. We also moved to using the same program and structures during our core time and during our intervention and enrichment time. So during core, students would get a lesson on a particular skill, and then during the intervention or enrichment time, it would be the same program, but it might be a different skill depending on what they needed. This year, after doing some research, and Eliza had shared some of the work that they had been doing over at Scootney with some Wiley Blevins in what the research was saying about being able to apply those phonics skills in more than one way, we had moved to, instead of that ELA enrichment time, intervention time, that was additional time to practice and apply those core skills. So during this time, students are taking that skill that they learned during their core time. They're doing writing and spelling with it. They're applying it in a fluency passage. They're doing word sorts with it. They're talking about it in terms of vocabulary. So there's way more repetitions and different ways to apply that skill. This was a shift for our system. We were like, okay, we're making the shift. Our staff was like, okay, we're on board. Let's start it, let's do it. We jumped in, did training as we went, and we're still refining and doing some of that training. But it did also increase some of those opportunities. Prior to this, our students in second grade only had an extra 35 minutes of applying some of those skills, but now they have additional time with doing that. So giving them that repetition and ways to apply those skills in different areas. Some of our next steps is, as we've gone through this, is to continue with some of the professional development for our staff. That's both our paras and our teachers who do this work with our students, and to continue to refine that. And then also we've had conversations around, there's still some opportunities that we need to provide for some students next year in our schedule for some enrichment or for some extra intervention. I don't have any specific numbers and data for you here tonight, but what I can tell you, some of the feedback from our teachers is we just keep hearing them say, our students are more confident. They're attacking words. They're trying to spell words, where in the past they just want to know how to spell things, and they're seeing the confidence in students.
Before we move on, could we take a brief intermission?
Yeah.
Could you go back to slide 5? Get ready. Not that one. The data one. That one. So for the board and for the team sitting here, what words or what feelings do you have or emotions when you see those scores?
For me, it's hard to think, like, what about the other 70% or 60-something percent of kids that, we're not there yet?
Mm-hmm. That makes me think I want to see what this year's numbers are so we can see where the trends go.
Yeah, and I would say just knowing that this is all your first year and what a challenge you guys were encountering right off the get-go, but I'm appreciating off the get-go that you guys are tackling that, and I appreciate that.
I think for me, one thing that what it made me feel was like urgency. Like this, we have to have kids who can read. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that has to be where our energy is. Until we can raise those numbers, we have to have like a really like clear idea of a plan of how to do that and a focus. Like that is our responsibility, is to create readers. So that's what I feel when I saw that.
Good. I want to share with you a reminder from December 8th, our December 8th board meeting. One of the sessions that I got to attend this weekend was about narratives about public education and how we have to remember to there are so many things that when we click on it, it's a negative news story. It's a negative story about someone that someone wants to put out. And so I want to remind you about this, the Hiawatha people and the board members. So go to slide 13, please. I'll tell you when. Keep going. That one. So this graph showed those students they just talked about and showed you pictures of, and every student in Othello, and all the schools in Washington, the elementary schools. And if you're above the line in the middle, you're performing better than the state expects you to. All 4 of our elementaries are above the line. Then you go to the next slide. And these are the 51 elementary schools in our region. We talked a little bit about vouchers, and if a parent had a chance to move their kid to Royal City or move their kid to Warden or move their kid to Moses Lake, would they want to do it? And if you showed them this data and said, here are the 51 schools in our area, and we go to the next slide, and here are the 25 schools that have positive results, only half of them outperformed what the state and the data and all the experts tell us our kids can do. And of those 25 schools, on the next slide, you'll see all of the Othello schools are at the top, including Hiawatha. People have been working hard there for a number of years. Students and families have been working hard. And so even though we never forget about that 70% of kids who haven't made it, we never stop looking for the best research. We never stop training the new people we get. Next slide. But we have to remember that there's over 1,000 elementary schools in Washington, and our schools are in that top piece of it, the top 20% for what the state expects us to put out. And you can get caught up in that negativity about what that number is, but we need to take every opportunity we can to remind people that they're getting a good return on their investment. Lots of really good people working really hard with our kids, and so I want to make sure that we acknowledge that every time we get a chance to.
Okay, so kind of how are we going to do it? And what Eliza and Melissa are kind of talking about is building a system, and that's what we have to have, a system that keeps going even if the pieces switch. Okay, so if Melissa's gone or whatever happens, we need to have a system. Sorry, I have to take out the garbage. We need to have a system in place. So when we look at that, we see RTI, MTSS work. And RTI stands for Response to Intervention, and MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports. And they're effectively the same thing. Just with the MTSS, that adds like a behavior component into it as well. And so like the comprehensive focus is academic, behavioral, social, emotional, and then mental health. So like building all of those things into our system. So why it matters? We need to create a capacity to implement high quality data-driven system that just kind of aligns with our school's focus and the use of our scope and sequence, okay? When we look at our outcomes, we need to strengthen our data-driven decision-making. We need to make sure we have equity for all our students in those tiered systems of support. So kind of think of it as like a triangle, okay? So at the very bottom of that triangle, we're gonna have our core instruction, and that instruction is for all of our students. Then you move up in the triangle, that's our tier 2 intervention. And that intervention is gonna be for some of our students, okay, that aren't quite getting it. And then the very top of the triangle, it should be the least amount of our students, is going to be our tier 3 and our intensive intervention. And that should have the least amount of students in it. And those students are getting all of the support, starting at the core. They're getting tier 2 and tier 3. Okay, that's the most important part, is they're getting all of those to try to get them back to where they need to be. We need to make sure that we're aligning our scope and sequences. So that's our core instruction that we're giving to our students every day. And that doesn't just mean the grade levels, but that also means K-6. So vertically aligning as well. And then just building those leadership teams, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And then when we have all of those things put together and in place, just the impact that it can have on our students to grow and thrive. So when we take a look at our team, it's a really big team because we have to hit all of these different pieces of our students. So it has Eliza and myself, with Melissa as our instructional coach. We have our counselor, Blanca, our school psychologist, Maria. Special education is Octavio. We have our ML teacher, multilingual teacher, Julia. And then we have some classroom teachers who are involved with that as well. In K2 representative, we have Jessica. 3-4 is Liz. And then in 5-6, we have a couple, Katie and Jennifer. So with all of that in mind, we took that group of teachers and specialists to a training a couple of weeks ago, and just to kind of give us some tools that we need. Now at Hiawatha, we have good instruction happening. Okay, when you go into the different classrooms, there is really great things happening. It's just about kind of tightening it up and just making it more succinct so that everyone is kind of on the same page. So, and really our goal is to really have that strong tier 1 instruction so that there's less students in those tier 2 and tier 3 situations. So here's some of the key takeaways that we had from that training, is that all students have to learn what's called the essential grade level standards. And working with the teachers will work together, and with what we know about the ESPA and things like that, they'll come up with, and some of them already have, those key standards that we'll be teaching. We need to build common planning. We have PLCs, and we just need to strengthen those a little bit, okay? Talking about what you're teaching, how you're gonna teach it, and then practicing with each other. It's not just, all right, here it is, because we all know there's different styles, there's different things that go into it. And so it's really about the equity. So if we have all those teachers working together, practicing their teaching together, and practicing their planning all together, they're going to be able to deliver instruction where all of the students are going to get that same equitable instruction. A couple things that they'll work on also is having common assessments, what it looks like to be proficient, what it looks like for students to understand what's being taught. And then a huge takeaway is that having students involved in their learning, okay? And that starts with goal setting, students tracking their work, getting feedback from the teacher, students reflecting, okay? Why did I not get this? Or this is how I got it, and just making sure that they understand. And then finally, that cycle just starts over again. And it just continues on to the next goal setting phase. There's no more clicks.
That's it. So we just wanted to thank you guys for visiting a few weeks ago, and then for having us tonight. And that's the end of our presentation, but if you have any questions or comments to share with us, we would love to hear from you.
I did have a good question about the student goal setting. How is that happening? Is that between them and their teacher? How do they keep track of that and revisit that?
So some teachers have it in their class where the students will like put their stuff on the wall and they can track their progress that way. Some of it's more private situation where like you might take like an interim or the STAR test or something like that, and you'll get your score, and then you'll come up with the goal, okay, I want to improve by 20 points or something like that. And so that would just be between the teacher and the student. And that's one of those things that we need to push a little bit more. It's happening in some of our classrooms. Kind of like I said before, we have good instruction happening, but we really need it to be more succinct and where we have everyone on board.
And then I saw one of your stats said the 14-year average for your teachers. That's pretty high, right? Is that higher than average for amount of years? So that's great. I don't have any more questions, but I did want to say thanks for having us over for the site visit. It was great. We got to see a lot of things, and the classroom walks were always great. I think it's normal for us to feel like, with a huge changeover from year to year, to be a little nervous about that, like a new principal, new vice principal, new everything. But from what we saw and from the things we heard your staff say about you, it all seemed like it was going really well. So we appreciate that. So.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I don't have any questions, but I too appreciated the site visit. I thought there was, just like tonight, there's a lot of transparency, even maybe like the numbers that you didn't want, but I think that it's good for us to see both sides, whether, improvement or it's great. And what I saw when I was in Melissa's group, to go around to each of the classrooms, each of those teachers was teaching the same thing, maybe in their own little style, but the students were engaged. They were and I remember just sitting back, and one student was having a particularly hard time with a word, and the teacher stayed with that student until he got it. And that just really meant a lot to me, because as a student who might struggle, it's easy to everybody else is getting it, let's just move on, let's push through. And I just really appreciated seeing that teacher stick with it until he got it. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Bertie. I thought it was so cool, and I felt bad for Melissa because I was asking too many questions. It was my first site visit. I've had a lot of other things come up lately, so I haven't been able to make them. But it was really nice to see, like, the students go through all the things, all the classes doing the exact same thing. So us being able to see every teacher's actually focusing on the same thing. So it was pretty cool. So thank you guys.
It was your first time at Hiawatha, period, right?
Yeah, actually, period. I had to call, and I'm like, where's the library? I've never been here before. So yeah.
Well, I am a Thunderbird, born and raised. Sorry I wasn't able to make it to the site visit, but I appreciate you guys coming tonight. It seems exciting, and I feel like the world is your oyster. You're just getting started. So congratulations, and hopefully it's only up from here. Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments, we're going to move on to public comment. Do we have any? Okay. Upcoming events. We talked about in board member discussion. It's pretty much everything on this list. minus that we also have, our regular scheduled board meetings and a site visit for Wahitas after our Lutakaga site visit. Our next board meeting will be on the 27th of April, and it will be at noon. So that's really the only standout in our upcoming events that we haven't already talked about. We'll move on to the board self-assessment of the meeting. A pro for me tonight is, I know a lot of people in this room, we didn't get home till 4:30 in the morning. And so it's been tough to get here. So I just appreciate everybody showing up tonight, and appreciate Hiawatha for coming to all of us, as we're not in our best tonight, but still giving us a really great presentation. So thank you guys. And thank you to the board and the district for showing up tonight.
As a pro, I just want to thank Aaron for giving us the national look at where the money is and where it's not, and giving us a perspective that, it's across the board and not just us feeling it. So thank you for that.
Another plus was, I like that Pete reminded us that we're still in the top 25%. So even though we don't think we're doing the best, we actually are doing pretty well. So I thought that was a great reminder.
We miss JR and our Liliana.
No, Gabby.
And Gabby.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. Gabby doesn't start yet. When does Gabby officially start?
She said June.
Yeah, it'll be in June after the school year. We'll take Liliana through graduation.
Okay. You were right. Sorry.
While I have the mic, following up on the Hiawatha report and Director Gerber's question to me, the average teacher experience in the Othello School District is 11.4 years, so Hiawatha above average, and the average in the state of Washington is 13.4, so just slightly under the average at Hiawatha. Gives you some context.
Do we have anything else for board self-assessment? Okay. At this time, the board will recess into executive session for 30 minutes to discuss the performance of a public employee and the sale or lease of real estate. No action will be taken following the executive session. This meeting is adjourned.